Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. It is June 2nd. We're in the brand new month of June 2024. And our topic this morning is claiming your spiritual inheritance. And I came across this in some of my readings and on email, and I just love this. It's an article entitled "Our Birthright" by Dr. Frederick Bales. Now, Dr. Frederick Bales was a cohort, I believe, of our founder, Ernest Holmes, and he wrote several books, including this book called Your Mind Can Heal You. So we want to make sure all of our participants are muted.
Yeah, I'm just gonna turn the
Okay.
volume down. There
Okay,
you go.
so this is his article in this book, Your Mind Can Heal You. Those who think that their healing depends upon their own puny mental efforts, such as concentration, willpower, and so on, will be disappointed. But those who learn how to allow this universal intelligence to flow in their behalf will find liberation and healing. This then is the intelligence, with a capital I, and the power, with a capital P, that man can send into action. When it's capitalized, it's another word for God. Mighty as it is to hold a universe in harmony, it is obedient to the thought and word of man, and can be directed toward the building of perfect health, happiness, and prosperity by that person who understands its complete responsiveness. This is the law of mind, whose power we invoke. It is greater than anything that seems to oppose our desires. Nothing in this universe has the power to frustrate us. We are one with the God mind and God power. Let us arise and claim our birthright, for the reality of mind is absolute and its scope limitless. And that really reminded me of the power that I found when I started learning how to use affirmative prayer. And I was reminded when he said this, that when he talks about the puny mind, your puny mind and puny willpower, that's talking about your conscious mind. It's not our conscious mind that does the work, but the conscious mind does direct the subconscious mind. Excuse me. And that is where we are connected with the mind of God in the subconscious. So the power the conscious mind directs, his conscious mind wrote this article and knows how to use it, excuse me. But we must remember that. And when I started thinking about all the evidence of the body being able to heal itself, for example, the placebo effect is a great example of that. But the connection that makes it possible is in the subconscious. And Bob had some fabulous experience with this in his work at the University of Rochester when he was but a youngster. You want to tell him about that placebo effect that they used?
Yeah, well, we actually were treating a woman who had lupus, and the lupus was very bad, meaning that it required a great many steroids in order to treat it. And the problem is steroids become the problem after a while. So you have the lupus, then you have the treatment, and then the treatment is the problem. So what we needed to do was to reduce the amount of steroids that she was taking, and if we did that, of course, the lupus would get worse. So we asked her for a smell that she didn't like, and she said her mother's perfume. A taste that she didn't like, it was cod liver oil. And we gave her a small taste of cod liver oil and a whiff of the perfume. At the same time, we gave her the full dose of steroid. Now what happens is the next day, or the next time it was time to give her medicine, we gave her the same fragrance, the same taste, and half the medicine. And what happened was her body reacted as if it was getting the full dose. And so what you have is that the body has the chemistry to reproduce or to mimic the condition that you're saying it can have. a more primitive, but I think a more enjoyable example of that is you have a headache, you have some aches and pains, you have some inflammation, there's things that don't feel right. You meet the person that you think is the one for you, and there's no pain, and there's no inflammation except where it needs to be. And you feel good, and all goes well. Well, how does that work? Well, what's taken precedent over your body, over everything, is that you're in love. And we know when we say people are in love, that you can, what's going on with you? You look different, you're radiant. And the truth is that what happens is the unconscious then is optimistic in its view of the world. It feels positive, it feels cared about. The unconscious mind is saying, someone loves us. And that's all it takes very often, especially if the person is not you that's doing the loving because you haven't loved yourself in a long time. When someone else loves you, suddenly you have this jolt of energy that says, I'm worth loving. Now, the mission is, of course, for us to be able to be self-loving rather than self-loathing. And in that self-loving, open the door to the unconscious to say, wow, all things are possible.
That's a great example. I just think the placebo effect is a great example
It is. It is.
of the body's ability to heal itself, but it's when we're not trying to control things with our conscious mind.
Now, the interesting thing about that too is that the patient knew that we were putting some things together and we were reducing the medicine. So even though she knew that, we have it's called a paired experience when you have two things together. When you just have one, the other one will show up. A good example of that you probably all know is you'll hear a melody, and when you hear the melody, you hear the words in your head, even though the words aren't being sung. And so if the words and the melody were given to you, if you have one, you get the other. And
Mm,
so the same thing would be true when you hold a thought. In fact, one of the reasons that I would do healing, when I would do healing tapes for people, is I would pair music, particular music, with the healing with the healing prayer. And what would happen eventually is the person would just put on the music and they would get the benefit of the prayer.
right, right. And I was thinking of some fabulous examples of healing when the healing is done by a practitioner for someone else. And I thought of one example, which my first teacher had been reared as a Christian scientist, and he had become a religious scientist, which is what we used to call ourselves. And a very good friend of his daughter, teenage daughter, was in a terrible accident where she had many, many broken bones. They didn't expect her to live. This was in Monterey, California. And she was in the emergency room. And he went into the hospital and told everybody, the nurses, everybody, I'm going to be very loud. And I think he was on the second floor and the girl was on the lower floor. That's the way I am envisioning it. And he started doing our affirmative prayer. We also call it sometimes a spiritual mind treatment because we're treating our mind to reach that subconscious part. And he did it very assertively and very loud, claiming that she was healed and whole and perfect, and went on for a long time with this. And that example and a couple of other examples where Bob and I have done healing for people in hospitals that worked, I believe it's because the patient, even if they seem unconscious, um, he was doing it for her. You see, he wasn't doing it for God. He wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it so that that patient would hear that, even though she appeared unconscious. And when Bob and I have done healing, even if I was not using any words at all, but the patient knew I was there for the purpose of healing. And he got better, he survived. And Bob too, Bob saw someone who was unconscious and who was,
Yeah, he was in a really bad, and a Native American who was in a very bad motorcycle accident. And so I got a call from somebody who had heard that I was doing healing work and said, would you go see him? Didn't know the person calling me. I didn't know the person who'd been injured in the motorcycle accident. I went to the intensive care unit where he was. His lymphatic system had been impaired, so he was blown up twice the size he normally would have been looked terrible, and they said.
And they did not expect him to
They said, yeah,
survive.
he'll do what you need to do, but he won't be here tomorrow anyway. We're doing everything we can, but we already know that. I said, I don't know that. And so I began doing the kind of affirmative prayer that you're talking about. And when I say affirmative prayer, I saw him in my mind's eye, getting back on a motorcycle and riding. I saw him dancing a Native American dance. I saw him smiling and saying, I love that I'm back to normal again. I could see him, I could sense it, I could feel it, and I kept holding that idea in my mind as I stood there doing the healing work that I was there to do. Now, what happened, of course, is I came back the next day and his lymphatic system was no longer impaired and he was down to a normal size.
It's
And then
amazing.
the next day he was conscious. And I came back to see him on the third day and he said, "Oh, you're the one who came to see me and did the healing work." I said, "You were unconscious, face down on a board, strapped down because he had so many injuries." And he said, "Oh, I saw you." And he said, you were like a light that came in and I heard you. And I didn't say a word. And so he heard my prayer and I didn't say a word. He saw me and his eyes were closed and he was unconscious.
And see, I believe that's because he connected with your subconscious. You connected with his subconscious, which
Exactly.
is connected to the mind of God. You know, that's how we are effective with healing prayer. It's not with our puny, what does he call it? Our puny um, mental efforts. It's not that. It's when we reach that other part. That's why I like to do healing work after I meditate. Because when you meditate, you go to that other part of your mind too. You're no longer using your conscious mind. You're in the subconscious, and that's what connects with all that is. And that is what empowers our affirmative prayers. And we need to remember to use it more often because we are so conditioned by our outer world that the only thing that heals is doctors and their medicine.
Well, what I think has happened to us is we have come to believe in the diseases. We have come to believe in the conditions more than we have come to believe in ourselves and the possibility of undoing or changing or making the conditions of our body uninhabitable for any other condition except wholeness and wellness. So since we believe so often in the disease, one of the reasons that we have to do, in some cases, a loud affirmative prayer is we have to speak louder than the self-doubt. We have to speak loud, but we can speak for another person. And this is what's really critical. If you can't say a prayer for yourself, if someone else can say that prayer for you, they can be saying it for you in your stead.
Exactly,
And
because
this
there's
works.
only one,
Yeah.
the subconscious is what we call the one mind. There's only
Yeah.
one mind and we're all connected.
If that weren't true, then none of the teachings that are popular today would have been able to be successful. That is, if there wasn't one mind, if there wasn't the mind of God that operates in and through us, how would we be doing prayer in the first place? Now, some people had God as a person, a guy a little over 6'4", looks pretty good, a little like Cary Grant, I think, but I'm not sure. And so
With long beard and hair.
well, yeah, but so they've got what I would call a small God. But that small God represents in their consciousness an idea of something greater that they're connected to. We would say, why go for the small stuff? Go for the big stuff. That is, we're all connected. And I can hold an idea for you, and other people can hold an idea for you, and that idea will hold you. And I see this happening again and again. So, but I want to go back to this, the other thing that you were saying. I love this. Those who think they are healing depend upon their own mental efforts, such as concentration, willpower will be disappointed. So your willpower is your ability to stay focused on the prayer that is going to work, not but the prayer is not going to work because you willed it into existence. You know, willpower is what got me the wrench that I needed to be able to put the leg on the chair back on the chair. It was determination, it was willpower, but it was the wrench and the focus and the willingness to say, whatever it takes, I will do this. And so I can do this, even though I couldn't by myself with my fingers turn the screw tight enough to hold the leg on the chair. But I could, but with sheer willpower and intelligence, find the proper wrench and tighten it down. And so it's doable even when it doesn't appear to be doable. And when I say appear to be doable, not necessarily by your own hand, but by the hand that you invite. Medicine is like that. Medicine is also a hand, one of the hands of God.
It is, and I'm very grateful for it, especially, for example, you recently had a procedure. I'm very grateful for the procedures that they do to come in and help certain body parts.
Yeah,
Certainly, I mean, you have uh, 2 knee replacements and 2 shoulder replacements. I'm very grateful for
Yeah.
those.
and I've ordered an entirely new brain from Amazon Prime, and I'm excited it's gonna be, they said it's empty, but I said the one I've got now is also, so this will,
So I'm not putting down our doctors and their
yeah,
medicine. And we certainly use those and take advantage of it. It's just that, uh, this other kind of healing seems magical,
mhm,
but it is so powerful and it's so perfectly effective that we forget to use it when we get afraid. And so when we get afraid, we really need to call someone to pray for us. And that's what our practitioners do. And our practitioners call me when they need treatment or affirmative prayer work. And I'm happy to do it for them because I don't have the fear that they have at the time. And that's why I can do it more effectively because we're all connected with the mind of God. And I want to go back to this versus the traditional prayer that I learned as a child.
mm,
And that is, and I was reminded of it when I saw a big billboard on 441, Highway 441 in Boca. And it said, pray to God, he listens. And I thought, yeah, that's just what I thought as a kid. And when you think of God as a person and a he, and he listens, you are automatically begging and pleading and hoping that God will do something for you.
well, you're negating that God in you as a
Yeah.
part of you.
Well, I never knew that
Yeah,
God was
well,
in me as a
in fact, that
child.
would be, for some teachings, that would be blasphemy, but that whole,
Yeah.
you can't connect with something out there that's not connected to you. There has to be that inner fabric of connection.
And actually in the New Testament, it says that about Christ, that Christ is in you. And so that's saying the same thing that we're saying, that connection with God is also in us. And that's what we're speaking to when we do affirmative prayer. And we just wanted to remind people because, as he says, we forget that it's our inheritance. We forget it's our birthright. We were born with it. And so let's not forget it. And let's use it for ourselves, for our planet. I read something very interesting this week about something that's going on around the world with courts, and they are ruling in regard to helping our planet. Um, and so I wanted to share this with, let's see, where is it? Had it right here. Oh, International Court admonishes countries for ocean warming, a landmark moment in climate protection. It says in a session in Hamburg, Germany, the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea said that planet warming gases absorbed by the ocean count as marine pollution and added that wealthy countries are duty bound to cut emissions faster than developing ones. Now, Germany itself is one of those the wealthy countries. So it was talking about themselves and others. The court said that states are legally obligated, by states they mean countries, legally obligated to curb greenhouse gases to protect the marine environment, a move hailed as a landmark moment. It is the first time an international court has issued such a statement and is a growing sign that courts will play an increasingly important role in help driving down emissions. Now, I think that's important because, as David Suzuki says, if we want to address global warming, we must learn to use our resources more wisely, kick our addiction to fossil fuels, and quickly start turning to sources of energy that have fewer impacts.
It's important.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to share a short story of the experience I had recently. Uh, I had the opportunity to acquire an 18-year-old Lincoln Town Car. And the car had some things that it needed. There were some things on it that were worn and were not functioning the way they should. And so I talked to some mechanics, and the mechanics told me what was wrong with my car. They told me what it would take to get the car fixed, and that's fine. But I met another person recently, and he does car restoration. And he restores older cars. He told me, I think he has a Buick that he's restoring. When he was telling me about the Buick that he was restoring, he wasn't talking about how broken the car was.
Mhm.
He was talking about how beautiful the car was and that he was finding that beauty and bringing it forward. And I thought, isn't this interesting? What if we were involved in personal restoration and that we were restorers of the beauty and the inherent good that lives in each of ourselves, rather than I'm broken, I'm hoping not too broken, I'll be broken. Brokenness seems to go in my family, or there's a lot of it. We tend to see what's wrong. And what was really interesting when he was looking at my car with a flashlight, looking to see what needed to be done. And all the while he's doing that, he's like a detective looking for the good.
Mm.
And when he got all done, he said, "Oh, this is a good car. This is a good car." Well, I thought that's interesting because he was admiring and appreciating the story that goes with the car, the history of it, the engineering. How can you take care of something if you can't know it and love it? And so what I was really impressed with was the quality of love and respect he had for the thing that he was looking at. Could we have that for ourselves? What I find happening very often when people get sick is they get mad at the part of themselves that's sick. They get mad and feel that they're a failure because they're sick. What about saying, I am not a failure? Something in me needs repair, something in me is broken, or it needs help, it needs support. Let me see that now, having been done. Let me see that complete. Let me go back to knowing the truth about myself, which is I have always been an amazing and extraordinary human being, and that won't stop because something's broken or needs repair. And as you said earlier in the very, very beginning, you said one of the most important things about us when anything breaks is that immediately upon the break, the body begins to try to do the healing.
Yes, that's what
It's
it
automatic.
does.
It's self-preservation, but it's also the program. So we have software installed within us for survival, but we also have it for having us being able to thrive. If you know anything about wildlife, you'll know that there's a number of creatures out there that only get as big as the cage will allow. And if you put them in a small pen or a small cage, and some fish are this way, they won't get too big. If you give them a river or give them a lake, they'll expand. What about consciousness? What if maybe
Mhm.
we put ourselves in a small box of a difficult life? Things aren't going to be easy. Things are never easy. Life is tough. There's not enough to go around. Everybody I know has to work hard to get what they want. You're making your box so small that no matter what you do, first off, it won't be fun, and secondly, it probably won't work. And so what we're really talking about today is the healing consciousness that you need to have in order to be able to say yes to the world, yes to your world of good. I would ask you to stand in front of a mirror for a couple of minutes, and if it's too bright, turn the light down so that you can enjoy the look, and admire yourself. Just admire this incredible human being, and there's no other one like it. And starting from that point of admiration, go from top to bottom or bottom to top or side to side, however you would like to do it, and appreciate all the different parts. And when you do that, that's a healing prayer. That's an affirmation that you're worth the time and attention that you're giving to yourself. How can you expect a healing to take place if you haven't made room for it?
Exactly, exactly. And so, how are we doing?
We're good.
Um,
We can go on for a couple hours if you want to.
so, uh, that was a very good point about that what the body naturally does is heal itself. And the best thing you can do to help it heal is de-stress. Whatever your situation is, so many of our illnesses today are caused by too much stress. And so if you possibly can change the situations that are causing you so much stress. Often what happens is we keep it up until the body breaks down and then we have to take a rest, but given enough nutrition and rest and peace of mind, the body will heal itself. We are time limited, it's just like our cats and dogs and everything has a lifespan. There is, from what we know right now anyway, a particular lifespan for human beings. And some live much longer than that. But, the good news is there's no such thing as death of your soul. And so we know that we keep going. I know that very well because my loved ones who passed over continue to communicate with me. So someone asked me recently, I bet that really decreases your fear of death, doesn't it? And I had to think about that question for a while because I don't fear death. But like most people, I fear suffering before death.
Mhm.
I don't mind dying. I just don't want to suffer as I do it or before I do it. And I really think that's true of most of us. But a lot of people are really afraid of the oblivion of death, that they are over. And I don't relate to that at all because I so know that it's not over. And
Yeah,
it's an eternal journey that we're on.
I'm not surprised that many people are afraid of death because they start out being afraid of living.
Uh-huh.
And,
Yeah,
and so many people approach daily living with great fear. Why wouldn't they have fear in death? They fear everything.
that's true.
And when you take your power back, when you take your inheritance back, you come from the place of what do I want to do to create? What am I going to do? What am I doing to create the world that is good for me, rather than what can I do to avoid something bad happening? And so a lot of people are living moment to moment, avoiding bad things. And that avoiding bad things doesn't bring good things. It means you're living a life where you're anticipating the bad, and if it doesn't happen, you still have it in your head. It just didn't happen. And so this is a shift from anticipating the bad to anticipating the good.
Yes, and we want to do that with our planet too. I found the quote I was looking for, and it's by Ban Ki-moon, the South Korean diplomat and former Secretary General of the United Nations. He says, we're using resources as if we had two planets, not one. There can be no plan B because there is no planet B. I love that. I love that. So I'm
Well,
not
you could look at yourself that way and say there's no you, there's no be you.
a plan B for me.
Yeah, there's just you.
It's just plan.
And the way you take care of you, the way you love yourself, the way you genuinely invest in you is the way you're going to love and care and invest in the world.
It's true. That's true.
So
So I just looked at my watch and
it's
it's
that time, yeah.
it is that time. And so we'd like to remind you, we're going to do a screen share here. We want to remind you that we appreciate your support, your financial support. I'm right over here. And this is our website, which is cslpalmbeaches.org. And when you go to ways to donate and click on that button, it will show you ways that you can donate to this organization, which is the Center for Spiritual Living of the Palm Beaches. So say this affirmation. An affirmation is a positive statement that affirms the truth for you. So let's say it. My investment today is made with a full realization that God is the source of my supply and
then
returns it to me enriched and multiplied. And this is what people find when they start giving. When they start giving, they get more of whatever they're giving. And so this applies to your money, it applies to love, it applies to friendship.
It's really, really important. It applies to everything in your life.
Applies
And
to everything.
this is a prayer for you. This is
Yeah.
not a prayer for us to have you support us as much as it is to have you support yourself and allow us to support you if that's something that we can do.
Right, and it is an investment
Yes.
in your good. So we thank you for donating. And then I also want to point out that Dr. Pamela Gray, one of our practitioners, and I have our last class in this series of Powering Your Decisions. Thank you. And it is the Living Richly one. And this is on mid-June, so it's in about 2 weeks on a Saturday from 1 to 4. And we'll be summarizing the first 3 that we did: personal happiness, creative expression, and health and well-being, along with what does it take to live richly. And that includes much more than just prosperity. So I will now stop that share, and we will
And recording.
end the recording.